You're 45 seconds into the part 2 speaking section in the IELTS test and your mind goes blank. You've said everything you can think of and the examiner is still looking at you expectantly. You know that you're supposed to speak for 2 minutes, but you've run out of things to say. This is one of the most stressful moments in the IELTS speaking test, and it happens to many people. At this point, most students panic and then start repeating themselves or simply tell the examiner that that's it, they cannot say anything more. If this happens, then I'm afraid you have just hurt your speaking score in the Fluency and Coherence category. But the good news is there are some simple techniques that you can use to easily speak confidently and comfortably for the full 2 minutes. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 extension strategies that you can use to speak confidently and easily fill those 2 minutes with a great talk that's going to improve your score. So make sure that you watch and take notes on all of these 5 strategies. Hi there, my name's David Bourne and I am your IELTS coach. IELTS Breakthrough is a YouTube channel dedicated to helping you get your best IELTS score. If you are going to study at an international university or progress in your career, then this is a channel you need to subscribe to. IELTS Breakthrough is packed with tips, strategies and tutorials on how to increase your IELTS result. There are videos all about the general training, academic versions and even life skills. So please make sure that you are subscribed and get notifications when new videos come out. Now, of course, in IELTS Breakthrough, we talk about strategies to speak for 2 minutes, and I've already put out a video on the most important overall strategies that you can use to keep going for those 2 minutes. If you haven't watched that, please take a look at that. As a quick overview, one of the strategies that I teach is to use the WH words. For IELTS speaking, there are 6 of them: what, why, how, and then who, where, and when. And in this video, with 5 extension strategies, I'm going to take this into more detail because there's a lot that we can say about it. One of the main problems is that candidates, when they do part 2, they just focus on the facts. And delivering the facts is not enough. That's probably going to give you 30 or 45 seconds of content. What are you going to do when you have another minute left to fill? So let's dive into these extension strategies and see how they can be used. Extension strategy number 1 is to use your personal feelings and reactions. So this relates to using and developing the how. Remember to talk about how did I feel. The key technique here is to talk about not just how you felt at the time, but also how you feel now looking back on that event. It's a really good idea to describe your feelings because basically it tends to be easy talking about emotions, and you can actually say quite a lot when you are describing emotions. Let me give you a little example of how this strategy works, and this is a short example from the topic of talk about a book that you read and found useful.
At first I was a bit skeptical because the cover looked quite old-fashioned. But once I started reading, I was completely hooked. I remember feeling quite emotional at the ending. I actually had tears in my eyes. Even now, when I think about that book, I feel a sense of nostalgia.
Note that there are some useful phrases you can use for this extension strategy. At first I felt. I remember feeling quite. It made me feel. Looking back now, I still feel. Even today, when I think about it, I. Extension strategy number 2 is to compare then and now. So this comes under the what WH word, where you talk about what happened. What happened then? What happened now? Usually, most students will make the mistake of just describing what happened then at the time, and then they don't kind of look at the actual effect and talk about what things are like now. So adding that extra element gives you more to talk about. And here's an example using this strategy. Again, we're keeping with the same part 2 task, which is to talk about a book that you found useful.
Back then, I didn't really understand why my teacher recommended this book. I thought it would be boring. But now, as an adult, I can see exactly what she meant. The themes of the book are much more relevant to me now than they were when I was younger. In fact, I'd probably enjoy it even more if I reread it today.
Here are some useful phrases you can use for strategy number 2. Back then, I didn't realise. At that time, I thought. But now I. Looking back, I can see that. These days, I feel differently about. If I could do it again, I would. Now, extension number 3 is to explain the impact or the consequence. This comes under the strategy of talking about what happened, and again it goes beyond just the factual delivery of what happened at the event, but describing the actual impact of that event. There are a couple of questions that might help you get ideas here. Did it change you? Did it lead to something else? Don't make the mistake of missing this opportunity. Here's an example, again with the topic of talk about a book you found useful, and you can see how it works.
After reading that book, I actually started exploring more novels by the same author. It sparked my interest in historical fiction, which I'd never been into before. In fact, I joined a book club because of it, and I'm still a member today. So in a way, that one book completely changed my reading habits.
Some useful phrases for strategy number 3. As a result, I. This led me to. Because of that experience, I started. It inspired me to. That's actually why I now. Okay, now strategy number 4. This is a really easy one. All you have to do is add sensory details. What I mean by sensory details are the senses. So, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you smell? What did it feel like by touch? Were there any other physical sensations that you can describe? Sensory details make your story a lot more vivid and memorable for the examiner. And let's face it, if your response is more interesting, it's going to help your score because the examiner is more engaged and will naturally pay more attention to what you're saying. Okay, so here's an example where the response uses sensory details. Just take a listen to this, and of course, as always, you've got the script. You can listen and read along.
I remember reading it on my balcony on a warm summer evening. I could hear the birds in the trees, and there was a gentle breeze. I had a cup of tea beside me, and I was so absorbed in the story that I didn't even notice it had gone cold.
For this strategy, there aren't really useful phrases. You need to think about the vocabulary items that you can use. So here are a few tips for you in terms of the vocabulary areas. What you could see, that's colours, lighting, surroundings. What you could hear, music, voices, silence, and words that describe those things. Physical sensations, temperature. Were you tired? Were you feeling energized? And then lastly, think of small specific moments that add interest to your talk. For example, did you have a cup of tea or coffee going on at the time? Were you sitting in a creaky chair? Okay, extension strategy number 5 is to speculate. Now, speculate is talking about the future, and you'll do this in part 3, but you can also use it in your part 2 talk. Speculate means thinking what if. That is, what if things were different? Think about alternative results that could have happened. Now, this is something that if you do it, it can really give a boost to your score because it requires quite complex grammar structures, and you also need to use some more, show your creative side to the examiner. Once again, let's look at an example where the speaker uses what if. And again, we're keeping with the example of talk about a book that you found useful.
If I hadn't picked up that book, I probably wouldn't have developed my love of reading. I might have spent that summer just watching TV instead, and I definitely wouldn't have met the people in my book club who are now some of my closest friends. So it's interesting to think how different my life might have been.
Now, there are some useful phrases you can use with this strategy, and most of these useful phrases include the grammatical structure. So, as I read these example phrases out to you, can you spot the grammatical structure? If I hadn't, I probably wouldn't have. Without that experience, I might have. I wonder what would have happened if. Things could have been very different if. It's hard to imagine how my life would be now if. Did you spot the grammatical structures? There are basically 2 of them. The first one is the third conditional, and then we can also use the modal auxiliaries would or could or might with the present perfect. Alright then, so they are the 5 strategies. Now let's just put all of this together where we can look at an example using all of these 5 strategies together. For this example, I'm going to stay with the part 2 topic that I've used, talk about a book that you found interesting. And as a response, we're going to use the very famous novel of To Kill a Mockingbird. Have you heard of that book? Have you read it? Watch what happens when we use these 5 strategies.
I'd like to talk about a book called To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. It's set in the American South in the 1930s and deals with themes of racism and injustice through the eyes of a young girl named Scout. When I first started reading it, I found it quite challenging because of the dialect and historical context. But as I got deeper into the story, I was completely drawn in. I remember feeling quite angry at the injustice portrayed in the book, but also hopeful because of the moral courage shown by Scout's father, Atticus Finch. I actually read most of it late at night in my bedroom with just a small lamp on. I can still picture myself sitting cross-legged on my bed, completely absorbed. I remember one night I stayed up until 2 a.m. because I couldn't put it down. That book really opened my eyes to issues of social justice, which I hadn't thought much about before. It actually inspired me to study sociology later at university. I even wrote my final essay about themes from that novel. Back then, I saw it mainly as a story about one family. But now, looking back, I understand it's really about how ordinary people can stand up against injustice, even when it's difficult. That message resonates with me even more today. If my teacher hadn't assigned that book, I honestly don't think I would have discovered my passion for literature and social issues. My whole educational path might have been different, so in many ways it was a turning point for me.
There you have it then. Now, one last thing is to give you a bit of help to practice. Remember that you can only get good at these strategies if you practice them before your real test day. Just try 2 or 3 of these extension strategies on the topics that I'll show you, and then record yourself. Make sure that you record your 2-minute talk, play it back and see how well you did. Here are some topics you can use. Number 1, describe a place you visited that you enjoyed. Number 2, describe a skill you learned. And number 3, describe a person who influenced you. So remember, running out of ideas is completely normal. And let's face it, anyone is going to struggle to speak for 2 minutes on a random topic that they are suddenly given. So don't worry, it's not that you cannot do it. Of course you can. You just need to know the strategies and practice them. Let me just recap these extension strategies. Number 1, add personal feelings. Number 2, compare then and now. Number 3, explain the impact. Number 4, add sensory details. And number 5, speculate about what if. Note that you don't need to use all 5 of these strategies together. Often you'll find that 2 or 3 of them are most comfortable to you, and in fact 2 or 3 is still going to give you lots of stuff that you can talk about, and they will probably be enough to fill those 2 minutes. Let me know in the comments how else can I help you with part 2 in the speaking test. And of course, remember to watch all of the other tutorials on the IELTS speaking test so that you know exactly how to handle everything in that speaking section. If you like this video, make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of these free tutorials. And of course, best of luck in your preparation. Let me know in the comments how it's going with your IELTS work. Have a great day, afternoon, weekend, and I'll see you in the next video.